Good evening. This special meeting of the Board of Education is called to order at 5:47 p.m. Mrs. Beard, could you please call roll?
Yes. Mrs. Bowles.
Here.
Mrs. Kraut is absent. Excused. Mrs. Funderburg.
Here.
Mrs. Buckley.
Here.
Mr. Theed is
He
absent.
will- yeah, he'll
Excused
be
on his
late.
way. Mrs. Beard's here. Mr. McLaughlin.
Here. Please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge
allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Board members, before we approve the agenda, I just have a statement that I want to share with you. At our last meeting, a personal matter was brought up. After researching the issue, I've realized I did in fact make a tasteless remark in a private, meaning two parties were involved in the conversation about a member of our community. I have apologized to the party involved, and I will not entertain further public comment. With that, the next item on the agenda is the approval of tonight's agenda. The chair will entertain a motion.
Mr. Chair, I make a motion that we approve the agenda as presented.
Support.
It's been moved by Ms. Buckley, supported by Ms. Funderburg. Any questions? Hearing none. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, motion carries. Next item on the agenda is the paraprofessional layoffs. Mrs. Peck?
I bring before the board two layoffs for the para unit for the 2013-14 year due to reduction in student enrollment.
Mr. Chair,
Yes, ma'am.
due to the projected decline in student enrollment, move that the Board of Education accept the recommendation of administration to lay off two paraprofessionals effective June 13th, 2013.
Support.
It's been moved by Ms. Buckley, supported by Ms. Funderburg. Any questions?
Yes.
Yes.
Ms. Buckley?
I have one. Rebecca, this is in line with what we do every year, the same thing we did with the teachers. And the
That's
same
correct.
things we always do.
Yep. In this case, there were three students that are exiting the high school as a result of graduation or successful completion, and those are students that are direct one-on-one paras. So
Oh, I
those
see.
paras no longer have a student because they've graduated.
Oh,
Okay.
well, that's great.
Yeah.
Okay, great.
Ms. Funderburg?
That covers my question, so.
Any further questions? Hearing none, all those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, motion carries. Next item on the agenda is the 6 p.m. Interview, so we will stand in recess until 6 p.m. Okay, we are reconvening. It is 6:01 p.m. The next item on tonight's agenda is Superintendent Candidate Interview, and I will now turn the microphone over to Marie Miller, the MASB consultant that's handling our search for us. Ms. Miller.
Thank you, President McLaughlin. On behalf of Romulus Community Schools, I'd like to welcome Dr. Paula Daniels to the interview this evening. I don't think that there's much need for introductions, but Dr. Daniels' current position is interim superintendent at Romulus. I'd like to take a couple of minutes to, I won't introduce board members since I think you know them pretty well.
For our viewing audience, it still might be a good idea.
Okay. For the viewing audience, we have President, Mr. Robert McLaughlin, Vice President, Ms. Teresa Beard, Secretary, Mr. John Theed, Treasurer, Ms. Cheryl Buckley, and then trustees, Danielle Funderburg, Ms. Danielle Funderburg, Ms. Sandra Kraut, and Ms. Tamika Boyles.
Thank you.
I'd like to take the second to talk about the format for this evening. The interview may take up to 60 to, although we've scheduled 90 minutes for the formal interview. There will be an opportunity for Dr. Daniels to ask the board questions at the end of her questions. If time allows, we will accept questions from the audience and ask those questions, and then for Dr. Daniels to make a closing statement. For those of you in the audience and for the viewing audience, you'll see that the format will be exactly the same, so you'll be hearing this a couple of times from me. Superintendent feedback forms and question cards are available for the audience to complete and are located on the back table. Question cards look like these, and during the course of the interview, if there's an audience member who has a question who they think they would like asked, please fill out that form, signing your name, and then submit it to me. You'll see me move around throughout the interview process. I'll pick those up. To be very honest, I will review those to make sure that they can legally be asked. And then, if there are a lot of questions, I kind of put them in groups for the board members and then submit them to the board. The completed feedback forms, which are also back on the table and look like this, are to provide you the opportunity to provide feedback to the board. And I will also, you can hand those to me at the end of the interview, or you can turn them into the board secretary directly. The board will consider comments if the form has been signed. The task, however, of choosing the next superintendent is the responsibility of the board as representatives of the community. While the board appreciates and seeks input of staff and community in the process, while the board is not seeking recommendations as to which individuals should be hired, they are seeking your input as to the strengths and concerns about each candidate. Please keep in mind the issues the board will use as a basis for their hiring decisions. They are printed on the bottom of the form. Also, please keep in mind that this form is considered a public document when received by the Board of Education. And with that thought in mind, I'm going to I serve as the timekeeper. So as we are going along, you may hear me interject that we are about halfway through and about how many questions we have. That's to help the board and the candidates stay on track. And with that, we'll pass over the microphone and then we'll begin.
Thank you.
Okay.
Is it okay?
Yes, Steve's got it.
Okay.
Okay. I have the first question, so
Okay.
welcome, Dr. Daniels.
Thank you.
While we have had the opportunity to review your resume, our audience has not. Would you briefly review your educational background and also your employment history?
Okay. Well, I grew up in Lansing, so I received all of my early education in Lansing Public Schools. I went to Western Michigan University for my bachelor's. While there, and I got a bachelor's of arts. My areas of study included education, English, theater, dance, and ethnic studies. I received my master's, specialist certificate, and doctorate from Wayne State University. My master's was in reading, my ed specialist was in administration and supervision, and my doctorate was in education, leadership, and policy. I've continued to keep up my certifications and am a perpetual student, so I'm always in a class or some type of training because I know that, you never can learn too much. My experience as far as my teaching experience, I started out in Inkster Public Schools. I've been an elementary school teacher and also a Title I teacher, and I taught reading and math. I have also been the professional development coordinator with my responsibilities for oversight for professional development for staff members in the school district. Compensatory education director, that was an old term. If you hadn't been around a long time, you might not know what compensatory education is. It's more commonly thought of as Title I now, but it encompassed more of the programs. So I was a compensatory education director, and that was my first administrative position. I've also had the opportunity to be a manager of a charter school. And what my primary focus was while I was there was to help the charter go into self-management. They were managed by a management company, but they wanted to go into self-management so that their staff could be a part of the teacher retirement system. So I helped them transition into that while I was there. I've also been a principal coach, a turnaround specialist, where I went and worked with principals in schools that were troubled, and we helped kind of get everybody back on target and moving forward. I've been a state and federal programs and curriculum director in a number of districts, which has given me an opportunity to look at both from many vantage points and see what the different needs are from one district to the next and what the common areas are. So, and that's been extremely helpful. I've been a building principal in two buildings, a large elementary school and then a smaller elementary school. The smaller elementary school where I was the school of choice building, so it was somewhat challenging because we were in a constant state of having new students come in. But it was a building that I took over when this building had not made AYP, and they had gotten to the level where the principal needed to be replaced. I had been working with the district as a principal coach. They asked me if I would take the position, so after a while, when we really saw no one else wanted to take it, I stepped in and we took it. And after 2 years, the building made AYP. So we were really, really pleased, with the improvement. And one of the things that's especially important to note, we made AYP with a novice staff. None of the teachers had more than 2 years of experience. So that was truly an accomplishment. But one of the things that was really pretty great about it, what you found out, was they just came in to teach the kids. They didn't know they weren't supposed to learn because they hadn't had breakfast. They just went in and did it. So that was something that we were all really pleased about in the community also. I've served as the Chief Academic Officer, and my duties included oversight of curriculum and instruction, material acquisition, and anything that had to do to the contribution of whatever was needed in order to ensure that students were going to be making academic progress. I've also been a Title I consultant, and in that capacity, I go to different schools and just help them put together school-wide plans, Title I plans, and help ensure that all of the elements that need to be in place were there. And then I've served as an interim superintendent, not only here, but in Inkster Public Schools. Some of my personal accomplishments that are a part of the professional realm, I was the recipient of the Michigan Association of State and Program Specialists State Leadership Achievement Award, and then the Linda Brown Lifetime Achievement Award. And Linda Brown was a person who worked at the Michigan Department of Education for a number of years. She was Michigan's key Title I person. And one of the things that made her absolutely great was that, number one, not only did she know the law and know how to implement it and know what it should look like in schools, but she always had students and children as her first priority. So in receiving that award, that was an extremely great honor for me. So,
Thank you.
Mrs. Crowe?
I have the second question. Why did you want to leave your prior position, and what attracted you to our school district?
well, I've been here, a little while now, and it's very interesting. One of the things you'll know about me as you're with me a while, I am moved under the unction of how I feel the Spirit is leading me. And I did have more time on my contract in my previous district, but I just felt that my season was starting to come to a close. And when this position was offered to me as the state and federal programs and curriculum supervisor, in Romulus, I just, sometimes you just kind of know this is what your next step should be. And I looked at, the district, we were doing great things, and I just felt that this was where I was supposed to come. And when I got here, And you got to know, it takes me a while to catch up with names. You know, I remember what people did, I remember faces, but I have to work to make sure that I get all the names in order. But after my first week here, I knew everyone's name in this office, and I knew I had landed at home. So, you know, the things that you were doing here, I wanted to help make sure that, you know, I could add whatever I could bring to the table to enrich it even more, because there were many great things that were going on. So that's really how I got here. And I did not leave my other district on a bad note at all. One of my goals is to always be in a position that wherever I leave with them wanting me to not go, and an opening for me to be able to go back.
Ms. Funderburg?
I have the next question. Our community expects its superintendent to be an active participant in all school and community activities. How would you balance your time and place priorities on these activities?
Well, we do a lot of great things in our community. You're absolutely right. And one of the things that I see is important is to make sure that we're not only visible, or the superintendent is not only visible in schools, at school events, but also in events in the community. Sometimes community events are in support of the school. We just had a banquet that was a community event to celebrate the accomplishment of our basketball team. But then sometimes there are events that celebrate the community. My absolute first priority would always be to make sure that I have that time where things that are important to our students, where I'm present there, and where our families are. Then, right up there, a close second, is to make sure that we are visible and not just visible, but an active participant in different organizations and other events that are going on in the community. Because, you know, we go together like hand in glove. So therefore, we need to be able to make sure that we invite community into our activities and then that we're present in those. So it will be a case of kind of taking a look at things. If they end up on the same night, if you can make it to both, you go to both. If it's one and I've been to your activity most recently, so I'm going to go to this one. So you're going to take it, you know, week by week and just kind of take a look at it and make sure that everyone gets an opportunity to have that interaction, and that I would be able to make it to as many of the activities as possible. Because I see that as one of the key roles. Because I also see the superintendent as the greatest cheerleader for the school district. And so you've got to be out there with the community to make that happen.
Thank you.
Next question is mine. In the development of a budget, what major goals and objectives do you establish? How many budgets have you developed, and how do they compare with what you would have to do here?
The first consideration in any budget is always, how is it going to impact student achievement? As a school district, that's what we're about, the student achievement. So when we start to look at numbers, dollars and cents, we always keep that paramount and right up in front of us as we go forward. We then start to take a look at what are those elements that are needed to ensure that our academic program goes forward. What are the pieces that we cannot do without? And then we start to build and flesh it out and prioritize based upon the academic needs, the instructional needs of our students, because that's why we're here, is to help our students learn and help them become prepared to compete in today's world. I've had an opportunity to be in positions where I've worked with a number of budgets. As the interim superintendent, I worked very closely with the business office as we, developed the budget. It was not always easy, because when I was in that position, we were in a district where we were in a deficit. So we had to really navigate through our spending There were times when I had folks who weren't real pleased with me because, you know, I would say anything that was non-essential spending, we had to put a hold on it. I remember having nights when I didn't sleep because I wanted to make sure that we made payroll. And that is, you know, a primary goal is to make sure that, you know, staff gets paid, bills get paid. But in doing all of that, we don't ever want, as I said before, we don't ever want to lose sight of why we're here and what's important, and that's our children. So in working with district budgets, I always have worked very closely with the business office. Personal budgets that I've done, I worked with, in a number of districts with Title I programs and the state and federal programs. In those, I was in charge of all of the budgets. Some of the budgets for those programs have been as high, with all of them collectively together, close to $5 million. And that's just in state and federal programs. The oversight of an assurance that what we included in the budgets were appropriate, that they were being spent appropriately, that we didn't go over budget, that we stayed compliant, that the kinds of things that we set in were those things that would actually help student achievement, help teachers develop, those types of things. That was a part of the responsibility. Before I left Inkster Public Schools, one of the grants that I helped to, you know, to put together and was one of the lead architects of it was a SIG grant. And I know we're familiar with the SIG grant. And in the state, Romulus received the second highest grant award in the state of Michigan. And Inkster received the top award, and that was the one that I helped develop. So I felt that was pretty good. Okay, you know, we got 2 great SIG grants going on here. But you know, when it comes to dealing with the budgets, I do look to the expertise of those who are the accountants and those who have that background. What I try to do is to oversee the types of things that are being spent. Are they being spent for the best? That'll be the best for our children. Is it going to be, you know, good for our staff and good for the district? So I see, you know, 2 sides. It's been a good partnership since I've been here working these last few months with Sherry, because, you know, I love how she's tight with the pennies. That's perfect. And what then I can come back and do is say, okay, let's see, how are we going to allocate these? Because that's one of the things that sometimes is a difficult thing for buildings to understand, for others to understand, is that one of the things too in oversight of budget, you look and make sure that the resources are going to the places that need it the most. And that is not always necessarily equal here, you know, $5 here, $5 here, $5 here, $5 here. If we really need $7.50 here, we need to see about getting that allocation there, if that's where the need is, to help ensure that whatever is in place to help our students achieve, that's what we do.
Thank you. Before we go with Mrs. Beard, just to make it clear, we're asking each candidate the same questions, and they're pre-printed here. For this particular question, there is a follow-up that you've already answered, Dr. Daniels, but for the record, the follow-up was, during a period of decline in revenue, explain how would you determine priorities and reallocate resources. But, you know, just for board members' information, you know, that's already kind of been asked and answered. But when we're going through this document, and for the audience's benefit, we're asking each candidate the same questions. So if we seem redundant, we are. Mrs. Beard.
Okay. Dr. Daniels, could you please share with us your philosophy and experiences in collective bargaining?
I grew up in a home, my parents were both educators, so, you know, we kind of went into the family business. And interestingly enough, my father was union president when I was growing up.
Oh, gosh.
So I've always had a a special place in my heart, and then as a union member for a number of years, understanding the partnership and the need to make sure that we work really closely with our unions. Collective bargaining, it's a part of the process in helping to make sure that our staff taken care of. I speak always about the needs of our students, because that is always going to be my number one priority. But very close behind that is that of the staff. Because when the well-being of the staff is looked after also, that only enhances what we can do with our, for our students. So I see it as extremely important to ensure that everyone understands what that process is. In any times whenever I've worked with unions in the past, one of the things that we always establish up front is that we really are here for the students. So let's go forward from that point. I've had an opportunity to, just before I left Inkster, we had started, doing some negotiating. And we had, come to the table with, with the students in mind first, but then, okay, how are we going to go forward? And everybody had an opportunity to provide input. What we did, we started out with, this is what we've got, so let's talk about how we're going to divide it up, how we're going to use it, and what it's going to look like. What that did was, it gave us a really good working relationship. So, for the areas where I was still there, we were able to really move through, because I really believe in kind of being that open book, and we all kind of come to the table and look at it together and go forward, recognizing that without students, none of us are needed. So again, that's why we always keep that in the forefront, but then also recognizing that one of the most important entities, one of the most important pieces of the whole education process is a teacher, and a good teacher. And we want to make sure that we do everything that we know how to do to help support, our staff, and to do those kinds of things to help ensure that they are able to give their best, because our children deserve our best. And one of the things that I always share with everyone, there are no do-overs in education. Once today is gone, it's gone. So we owe it to those that we serve to give our absolute best every day, and even as a part of that negotiation process, we also keep that in mind.
I'd like to ask the follow-up question. What has been your experience in dealing with grievances?
I've had, I've been in a situation where we worked, where there've been grievances. I know Ms. Peckett shared something once, and I couldn't say it any better. Grievances are part of the process. It's a part of the communication process, and that's okay. The way I've always handled things is to, first of all, take a look at whatever the issue is. And once it's reviewed, if we find that we as the district have been in error, we correct it. We get it corrected right away. Because we don't, we're not trying to just perpetuate wrongdoing. So if we see it's an error, we go after it. If we do not feel that the alleged incident is in fact in any way contrary to what contractual agreement, the agreement includes, then we have some conversations about it and try to work things out. Then we go forward. If it can't be worked out, and we go to arbitration or whatever the next steps are. But one of the key things is to make sure that we always listen, try to get all of the facts, and then objectively review, what's going on. But having good conversation, Because oftentimes when you have good conversation and good opportunity to really talk things out, you can have an opportunity to see, well, you know, that really, oh, okay, I see how that was, or we did not realize that that was the way you were interpreting this. You know, those kinds of things. So it's critical to make sure that the communication stays as open and as positive as possible.
I have the next question for you, Dr. Daniels. Can you share with us your experience with deficit elimination plans?
I've been with 2 districts who were working on deficit reduction plans. The first district, they were just starting to go in that, so my only real involvement was just in general conversation. But then I was with Inkster Public Schools, and they were in the midst of a deficit reduction plan. One of the key things that's critical in the plan is to make sure that you have taken a look at as many facts, you know, that you can garner, and put together a plan that won't impact the integrity of your academic program, but that will still meet the financial needs and constraints that, you know, will probably be put in place. A review, the state reviews, you know, the deficit elimination, you know how you're coming along monthly. What we did was do it weekly, because we felt if we were looking at it weekly, there would be no surprises at the end of a month. One of the things that we found was, as long as we were being very diligent in moving in the direction where, you know, we were getting rid of the deficit, the state was willing to continue to work with us. There were times when we would be trucking along and things seemed to be going good, and then we get a new curveball thrown at us, be it retirement rate going up, or, you know, things that were unforeseeable to impact the numbers we had submitted. So, you know, we went back to the drawing board. But we were very quick to always call on, you know, some of our contacts at the State Department to get input on what things that they saw, you know, might be helpful, because we were working very hard not to get a, you know, emergency financial manager in. And, you know, at least as long as I was there, we did not have one. And that was, I believe, part of it was working so closely with them, with the state, and then being able to see how we were really diligently trying to work, you know, to get that plan done. There was no frivolous spending. You know, like I said, I had some who were really concerned because if it was not an essential expense, we weren't going there. It's not an easy place to be. It can be very difficult, because one of the things as the superintendent, as I mentioned before, you do have to work to make sure that the quality and the integrity of your program is not compromised. And Romulus has been so diligent at being frugal in their spending and in really trying to work to contain costs. But, you know, we've got a lot of outside factors that we have, over which we have no control, that even here, you know, we're having to work against. But again, I can't stress the importance of really working very closely with the Department of Education to help make sure that we're doing those things that we need to do to continue to maintain our programs while still eliminate our deficit.
Okay, Dr. Daniels, my question is, please give an example when you were especially innovative with business partnerships or grants.
Okay, I've worked in districts where, you know, and one thing I have to say, Romulus schools are already doing a lot of great things with business partnerships. So it was really fun coming in and seeing things that I could learn from. But I know I've been in districts where we have had specialty kinds of partnerships. I was in a building, we had a partnership with Edison Brothers, you know, they do the bagels. And every 2 weeks, we would get the day-old baked goods. And we had an opportunity to share them with our families. And it was a school where the poverty count was close to 90%. So it was welcomed, but then we started even expanding it so that not only were we, doing the bread thing, but having other kinds of opportunities for, tutoring and coming in and sharing special activities with us with them with us. In our district, we've got some tremendous partnerships that, we've got going on. We have businesses adopting schools, which is fantastic. And in another district, one of the things that we did, we created an honor roll, and it was a business honor roll. And we have a little, celebration where we invite the, representatives from the businesses in, and our kids would do a little, program, thanking them. One of the things also is to note that there are big businesses and there are small businesses, and then there are businesses in between. So we've started trying to create, we were creating those partnerships, across the board. We had a partnership with Selfridge Air Force Base in one of my buildings, and our students used to go out to the base and get to be little junior astronauts. After 9/11, that kind of came to a close. But those kinds of opportunities in other areas are still out there, and some of them are starting to open back up a little bit. So, those are some of the kinds of things that we get an opportunity to do. In addition to getting partners who provide scholarships for our high school students, who provided scholarships for summer activities for our middle school and elementary school students, kind of an adopt a building and then send a kid. I've been where we had partnerships with companies who got backpacks for students. So, there have been a number of different kinds, but you're always looking for additional opportunities. And then for the grants, there are, in addition to like federal grants, there have also been specialty grants like Target. There are certain places that have grants. Target, some of like Sony, some of the electronics companies, those they provide grants, and often those grants are for teachers in classrooms. So we are always encouraging teachers to try to, help with those grants. Periodically, if I see something that comes out, I'll send it out to others so that if they think they're interested, they can go forth and, and do some things. I've got someone I'm working with right now to see about getting some computers. They are, not brand new, but they're refurbished. And they not only would be good for perhaps some of our classrooms, but I was thinking specifically in terms of having some that maybe families could rent or buy or something, but to get them out in the community also.
Okay. Mrs. Buckley?
Dr. Daniels. As superintendent, what do you see as your role in promoting student achievement?
I think that the role of the superintendent, they're the leader when it comes to student achievement. Everyone has a specific role to play and a different function, but as the superintendent, it is necessary to ensure that, one, the type of curriculum that's being provided and implemented is strong. We're moving into the Common Core curriculum. Smarter Balanced Assessment, which goes along with curriculum, the new science standards that are coming out, social studies, which has kind of gone by the wayside, but is critical in this day, making sure that we get all of that to the forefront. Superintendent should be there to help provide support to building administrators and staff alike. That will help, that will mean, as we're looking at our finances, making sure that resources, get directed there to support what's needed, to ensure that students have and teachers have what's necessary to provide, quality instruction. And that's not to say that you always have to have money to do good teaching, because that's not true. But you do need good support materials, especially, in this day as we're making shifts. Making sure that things are monitored. Helping to support and monitor principals as they monitor the instruction that's going on in the classrooms. Going out myself to visit, classrooms. I've had an opportunity to, in the first semester, to really kind of get out a lot. Since January, I haven't gotten out quite as much, but to go out and see myself and to actually participate in activities, and when special things are going on, or just drop-bys. I'm good for saying I'm just dropping in, I'm not looking for anything special, I'm just here. But a part of that has to do with academically what's happening in the classrooms, because I need to come and see it for myself. And it's good when you never know when mom's going to drop in, you keep your room cleaner, So it's just kind of one of those, but making sure that I can visibly look at, what's going on, staying abreast of what the changes are, so that as we do budgets for Title IIA, which is professional development, as we're looking at Title I budgets and supporting things that are going on in the classroom, and then in the general fund budget, helping to guide through. I know some of the conversations Sherry and I have had, since the district participated in pay setters, all of the central office are assigned to buildings, so everyone gets out. And one of the things that Sherry had shared at one of our staff meetings, she was glad to be able to go out because, she get the PO, but it's just, but then she gets to see, oh, that is this. And it starts to make sense, and it becomes alive for her too. Well, that's one of the things that superintendent has to also be able to do, make sure that they're aware of what's going on, so that they can help evaluate. One of the things that we're moving into in the district is program evaluation. We're starting it out with our elementary buildings as a part of Title I requirements, but it's something that we're going to be implementing K-12. And in that program evaluation, we're specifically looking at what are we doing, is it working? Do we continue? If it is, if it's not working, why? Is it something that we can correct? And if it's something, if we just see, this was a best practice, but it's just not producing what we wanted it to produce here, then it's time to move on. All of that is a part of, making sure that student achievement, because those kinds of decisions are driven by what you find out in those evaluations. And it's part of the superintendent's job to help look at that. I call it I used to say, the big picture or the broad picture, but now I call it the Google eye view, to be able to look down and see, more of what's going on, and recognize and know that the bullseye where the little star is student achievement.
I'm going to interrupt. We're a little over halfway there, probably a little bit behind some questions. However, Dr. Daniels has already answered some of the questions that are coming up. So for board members, go ahead and ask the question, Dr. Daniels. If you feel you've answered it, feel free to say that you've asked it. If the board wants more information, they can correct you that way.
Okay.
We're pretty close on target.
Okay.
Thank you.
I just wanted to touch on this follow-up question. How has your leadership improved the success of students in your present district?
Helping to really provide support to building principals, helping to try to give them the tools that they need to make sure that as they monitor, as they implement strategies and programs, helping them know how to evaluate and take a look at those kinds of things, that translates into instructional practices and acquisition of materials that will positively impact student achievement. That's one of the ways.
Okay, thank you.
The next question is mine.
Okay.
Have you ever had the experience of eliminating a program that was no longer working or the district could no longer afford, but was still loved? How did you handle the situation?
Yes, I have had that to happen. It goes back to program evaluation. I have not had to be in a position where a program that was working and that was loved was eliminated. Because what we did, we sought to find other ways to fund it if that was the case. But for the most part, in moving some of the other ones out of the way that weren't working. When you do good program evaluation, and start to really take a look at that, you have to get very, very, very laser focused in, is it doing what we need for it to do? If it's not doing it, we help everyone understand. And the process is not just a superintendent thing or not just a principal thing, it's entire staff. Staff comes together. Staff is a part of the evaluation process. Staff asks hard questions. Is it working? If it's not working, why? And just, if that's not happening, why this? Why? Until we get to the core of it. I've had some times when people were really trying to hold on to some things because they've been doing it forever and they liked it, but it really wasn't working. And what ended up happening when the whole staff came together, and it was kind of a grieving process that we went through with some because it was so beloved, but we always look at the data. What is the data telling us? And we go back. If the data is telling us it's telling us it's working, but it's getting to be too costly, is there some way that we can modify it without jeopardizing the integrity of the program? Is there another way we can get it funded? Sometimes a grant will pick up something. And I don't mean a big grant, but a smaller grant. It's not an easy thing. It's not an easy process. It's a necessary process. And the more you can have communication and help others understand what that process is and the why we are doing it, then that's when we're able to kind of go forward with that. But yes, to both. A beloved that was working, and again, we didn't get rid of it. We just found other ways to fund it. But then some things that weren't working and people liked it, but we had to let it go anyway. And for those who really liked it and didn't want to let it go, we worked to really get them involved and be a part of whatever else we were doing so that it was kind of a handoff. I don't have this anymore, but I can find ownership in something else. And often that worked.
Dr. Daniels, I believe you kind of answered this in your earlier question. How many times in the past semester were you in a classroom? And please describe what you learned from these visits.
I'll just touch on what I learned because I've been in
Yeah,
classrooms.
I
kind
know.
of
You just told us in the previous question, yeah.
One thing I learned that, well, it wasn't even a new learning, but it was a reinforcement of something I already knew. We got great kids. We got great staff. We just do. And one of the things that became very evident was kids really want to learn even at the middle school because they want to please, also. So, and that, I see that, when I'm there. At the high school, the elementary schools, I have had an opportunity to see special projects going on, special things that were happening in all of the buildings. I'm learning more and more about the family atmosphere in the buildings and the true caring that staff have for our children and the love that our kids have for, their teachers. And are there times you get mad at the teacher? Absolutely. Are there times when staff say, okay, baby, I love you, but you know what, if you don't sit down. Yeah. But just really having reaffirmed the understanding that we've got teachers who want our kids to learn and who are dedicated to doing that, and we've got students who want to make that happen. A lot of innovation going on. I see a lot of special activities going on in classrooms. We've got some district initiatives that we're moving forward with. And, it's always gratifying when you can go into a building and actually see what the training has been. You can see it present. One of the things that we're implementing as a part of our brain-based approach to instruction is the implementation of thinking maps, which is really a way of thinking. And they have non-linguistic representations of different thought processes. And they're the maps. And I can go in buildings and see it everywhere. And kids talking about it. And can we use this map? Or, which shows me that what we are trying to help, some of those things that we're providing for teachers to help them, they are in fact using it. Kids are receiving it, and then they are using it to help them learn. So those are just some of the things.
Thank you. Student achievement is very important to us. What action would you be responsible for to enhance student learning? Please give us examples of how you have addressed the achievement gap in your current district.
Well, some things that I've done in other districts, and we're also doing here. When I got to Romulus, we were already well on our way to being data-driven. And I had been in districts where that was not the case. And one of the things that I worked to do was to help everybody learn what data was all about and the function of data. Because if all you have is data but you don't do anything with it, it's just data. It's just stuff. But moving to that place, and when I came here, that was where we were here in Romulus, and I see us picking up steam, and we've continued to do that. And that's to take the data and say, okay, what does it tell you? What did this data say? And based upon what it said, now what are we going to do? How are we going to change what we do? How are we going to enhance what we do? Because what we're looking at is data about student achievement, some other pieces that support that. But what does that mean for us? And that's one of those key pieces. Perception data is another kind of data that has to be collected. And our buildings are becoming more and more adept at getting that data. One example with the perception data, one of our goals is, to get parental involvement and engagement going. So one thing I've shared with buildings is in working with surveys. And oftentimes when we put together surveys, they've been 4 or 5 pages long, and we give them and we pray that we get them back and they were at the end of the year. So one of the things that we started working towards was, first of all, going to surveys that didn't have more than 3 questions on it. Be very specific about what the information is that you want. One of the things I used to do in one district, if there was, especially at the high school when we needed perceptual data, we'd have teams out, and they'd have a clipboard, they'd have a half sheet, 3 basic questions, and as parents and everybody was, or community, because if we were trying to get community input, as they came in, 3 questions, we just asked them if they'd do it real quickly and drop it in a bag. We didn't even want to see it at the time, we just dropped it in a bag. Well, that gave us some very specific information, and parents and community, they didn't mind doing 3 questions. You can do that one easily. But then take that information, and one of the things that I tell the buildings to do, if you have done surveys, report out what it said. So if you're asking when are the best times when you could meet and come work with us? Is there a special area you would like for us to address? Do you feel that, do you feel that we care about you when you come to the school? Well, in your newsletter or at some point, put those questions down and report out what it said. And then in addition to that, tell what you've done as a result of that information. And that goes back to taking the data and doing something with it. If most of your parents said Saturday morning at 9 was a great time for them to meet, and haha joke, but Saturday morning at 9, well, guess what? That's when we're going to start. As a result of what you shared, we're going to plan this, this, and this at that time. Just an example of how you take that data and also draw parents in, because then some of your specific questions are, we're implementing thinking maps. Has your child talked about it when they came home? Would you be interested in a workshop where we could share with you how you can use them? Is there something else that you would like how we can serve you? When you start pulling all those things together, it directly goes to support what's happening in the classroom, what's happening at home, all of these being contributors to help with student achievement.
What is your expertise with current technology?
I think technology is critical. I can navigate my way through, most programs. I was a Mac person when I started out. I got thrust into the PCs, and now I'm kind of out there with both of them and try to make sure that I navigate, in all of them. You need to know that I do have an expert who's helping me learn how to really put together some, pretty slick videos. My expert is my 14-year-old grandson, and believe me, if you want to really do a good job, find a teenager and they'll help you with it. I think that technology is absolutely critical for our students, but I also don't ever want us to see technology as the end in itself. Technology is a tool that we want our children to be able to use, our students to be able to use as a means to other things, be it to acquire information, be it to put together presentations, to analyze data, to use as a tool for marketing and any other careers that are out there that would need technology. So one of the things also that I was really pleased with, when I landed in Romulus, was the fact that technology was such a high priority, because it absolutely is essential.
The follow-up question to this is, what is your idea of the classroom of the future?
I see the classroom of the future being project-oriented, built around, situations, real life. Even for kindergartners, we can have opportunities to help even them with the thinking strategies and skills needed, because those are the kinds of things, in order to be able to deal in the world, are part of some of those things that have to be involved. I think that I think there should be a variety. So when you say the classroom, I think it might even be that you look at the school, because from one classroom to the next, we might have some different kinds of formats, so that we can truly provide, differentiated instruction in process and in activities. I've had an opportunity to work in open schools. I was an exchange teacher in England, and it was in the day of the open classroom, where we had no walls, or we had the walls that would move. It worked well at the time. You know, we moved away from it as we moved into an era of certain kinds of standards that everyone was working toward, and we lost that ability to really have students have an opportunity to have experiences around which they could, you know, really learn. I think that brain-based schools are the way that we have to go. We have to become very aware of what the brain needs to learn in order to really make the abstract become concrete. Students need to have an opportunity to participate, to do things, to make things, to build things, to have a problem and solve the problem. And I had and when I talk about kindergartners, this is a real situation. We were working on graphs and we did ice cream. Every kid had to say what their favorite flavor was. We created a chart, you know, who had what. There were only a couple of kids who wanted, you know, most of them were chocolate. You know, that was chocolate, strawberry, and vanilla. But then we had a butter pecan or two out there. And so what we said was, okay, we're going to have an opportunity to get 3 kinds of ice cream. Which kinds, based upon the graph, are we going to get? They all knew. These are the big ones. Had a kid say, well, what about the butter pecan? Now, this is kindergartner. What about the butter pecan? That was a problem. All of a sudden, you had a situation where they were concerned about someone who was not going to be able to get their favorite. So we started talking about what might we do? Something simple, and they came up with it, but it did 2 things. One, they recognized everybody's not going to get any, so we got a problem. But then one of the other things that was so gratifying, they cared about the people who were going to be left out. They cared about their classmates who weren't going to be able to be included. Having those kinds of activities, that's what we need. Having opportunities for students to, and this is in that perfect school where they can see mistakes as learning opportunities. Now that can happen now. It's just us changing. A mistake is how we learn. And what has happened, you know, be it through the educational systems, the government, whatever, you know, having to get that right answer on that test has narrowed our focus. But I'd like for us to be at that place where kids have an opportunity to really expand, use technology, create their own technology, be able to write, be able to create things, create the gardens inside, create the robots inside, and let them come up with part of what we want to do. Letting them know these are the things we need to accomplish. How would you like to get there? How do you think that would best work? And having that kind of collaboration, I think, is what we need to make sure that we keep our kids truly engaged and really ready to meet the future.
Thank you.
Okay, it's me again. We've got about 12 questions left.
Okay.
So I think the board's break is not going to quite be the 15 minutes. We'll probably go a little bit beyond that hour and a half mark. But I think the information is important, so that we will, you know, keep on moving. So I'll keep you on breath.
Need to take a drink or anything?
I just did, thanks.
Okay, I have the next question for you. What is the role and the importance of extracurricular activities in an educational program?
It goes straight back to what the brain needs. Those extracurricular activities, those extra kinds of activities enrich our students. It gives an opportunity for those students who might not necessarily be the A or B student to excel. It gives them an opportunity to really show what some of their other talents are. It helps teachers, because as we start to see some of the areas where our students excel, that helps give us some pathways to follow to try to provide the instruction, you know, the regular core instruction. I think that our students need those extracurricular activities to help become more well-rounded. It gives them an opportunity to interact with other students in something other than a classroom. You see leaders rise to the surface. You see those who are good supporters hone in on those skills, because everybody can't lead. But if you don't have a good set of or a good team who really knows how to pick up the slack and give the ideas and help make sure that everything is running, then you're still not going to make it. So extracurricular activities provide those kinds of experiences. See how fast I did that?
Yeah, that was pretty good. Okay, please share with us your experiences in working with all special needs students and have you developed alternative methods to deliver services to meet their needs?
My experience is, I started out, real quickly. I grew up in a home with a mother who was a special ed teacher. So, I already had a mindset in school social worker. So I always had a special place in my heart for special ed programs. I really got to be a part, I have an integral part of special ed when I was in a district when the special ed director left. And I became the administrator of record. And even though there was a special ed trained person who managed the day-to-day operations, again, I was the administrator, of record. And at that time, I became, much more familiar with the IDEA regulations and different rules. And while I was in the position, we had a monitoring visit, which, at the time it didn't feel real good, but after they left, I really appreciated it because I knew the kinds of things they were looking for. I understood about least restrictive environment. I understood about, accommodations. I understood about making sure that our special ed students receive the same opportunities to meet those high standards using accommodations that will specifically help them meet them, help them along. If you've got a broken leg, nobody says anything if you go with crutches or you've got a cast. It's just helping you to move. It's the same kind of thing. There are certain kinds of things that will help students with special needs to attain those skills, and that's what we want to do. One of the things that we've implemented, I mentioned thinking maps before. Thinking maps were developed by David Hirely, and he was a special ed teacher. And he initially developed them for his special ed students because it provided a visual view of thought processes. And it was much easier, then what you found out, that it worked well for everybody. And so, we've implemented it across. But one of the things that I know, I think is critical is to continue to work with special ed staff and with general ed staff so that they understand what the special needs are and how we are here to help and help really get that understanding that our special needs students can accomplish phenomenal things. There was an article in the paper very recently about Michelle Carr working with one of our high school students who was a basketball player, if I'm not mistaken, who got being accepted in college. Well, it was because there was an understanding of what help needed to look like to make sure that they could go forward. So, that's where we all want to come to. That's where I like everyone to be. And in doing so, we can help ensure that we provide, all of our students, including our special ed students, with, just optimal opportunities to succeed.
Okay. Can you share with us any methods of accountability and motivation you have initiated successfully to ensure the delivery of a quality instructional program?
Well, one of the things that, we always try to do is celebrate when good things are going on. When we have be it activities or initiatives that we are finding they're successful. We, as you know, our Camp Learn a Lot, which is a program that we initiated, has received one of the Excellence in Education Awards from the Michigan School Board Association. Our SIG program is getting, acclaim, recognition for its initiatives. different things that are going on in our buildings, making sure that we continue to monitor, the things that are going on and share it. Those are some of the kinds of things that we're really looking to try to do. And in celebrating those things that we do well and taking note of the things that need improvement, but giving encouragement and giving support and resources to help make things even better helps broaden that whole base and move the whole thing forward.
Thank you.
Describe your past relations with administrators, teachers, support staff, and their unions.
Okay, since I've been here, I've had an opportunity to work very closely with administrators, through meetings, through visits to buildings. If they have, problems or concerns, that, try to be there as a resource and help out. Making sure that as I see things that are going on great, make sure that I encourage them and acknowledge, the things that I've seen in visiting classrooms, having an opportunity to communicate with different teachers. I've had teachers who come to ask me, to provide them support in special endeavors, in educational endeavors and things that they're doing. So, I look at that as an indicator that I'm open enough where people feel comfortable enough to come and ask for some help and some support. I try to make sure that any endeavors that our staff want to go forward with, I try to provide any information or support that I can to make sure that, we can make those kinds of things happen whenever possible. I appreciate our staff extremely, extremely much. And so as often as possible, I try to just make sure that I can avail myself. And as I see things coming along, sometimes if I know I've had a conversation with a staff member and we've talked about something and something comes along, I'll shoot them an email or grab an article and send it to them. The most recent thing, I was talking with Mrs. McGlynn, and they were working on some early childhood initiatives, and I said, this is one of the sets of money we're going after, because this is on the president's agenda. Well, sure enough, I got an article, about it, like in the same day, and I, shot it right off to them so that they could, take a look at it. So trying to be a resource.
Dr. Daniels, gaining commitment from others is essential for a superintendent, whether it is from school personnel or the community. What techniques have you used to gain acceptance of ideas or plans? And please give us an example of how you used one of these techniques.
Making personal contacts is very important. Personal contacts with staff and, community and parents. Since I've been here, I've had an opportunity to, work with some of the community organizations. I had a shopping list of those I was going to try to get to, and I haven't gotten to everybody yet, but the year's not over. But, actually working with the Ministerial Alliance is one. And, and coming together and talking about some of what our initiatives are. And, telling them, we're looking for you to help. And these are some of the things we're going to want to do. The Read Around the World, which we're still trying to get going. And, I said, what we're going to need is a commitment from you to share that, with your congregations. And then I hear some of their ideas and what they think. I know I got back a homework hour, and it was interesting. I've been in a district where they had a homework hour. So that's one of the things we're going to take a look at is developing homework hour. Working specifically with teachers. I've had some where they've really been interested in certain kinds of things. And in talking about it, say, okay, we're going to go out and try to see what we can find, and if we can get some funds or whatever to support that, we're going to make sure that, we work together on that. But, you know, we need you committed to make sure that you're going to work with us. So one of the keys is to specifically identify, you know, a goal or a task or something, and make that partnership on something specific so that it's not just broad and, you know, global and whoever, but the more specific we can become, that's when people are not so hesitant to have a commitment to something.
Thank you.
How often and by what means will you communicate with the board?
At least weekly, daily if, you know, when things arise. Weekly notes, phone calls, individual, you know, emails sometimes. I try to give everybody a birthday card, so those of you who haven't already got one, they're coming, and even if they come late, you get one that says it was on time and then the one that there was the late one. But, you know, one of the things that, you know, I really am interested in, or what as superintendent would be interested in, is finding what are, you know, I know what some of those things are that are near and dear to your hearts, but I don't know everyone's yet. And that's one of the things, you know, that, you know, I like to look forward to. I hadn't made it to everybody's house for dinner yet, so, you know, let me know when a good date is. But just I know schedules are different, so I know email is one way, leaving phone messages, you know, sometimes, but then also very open to, you know, ways that you'd like, you know, and that works for me too.
If you and the board, as a follow-up, if you and the board disagree on an issue, how would you resolve it?
Well, you know, I like to make sure that we get it all out and have a lot of conversation, weigh pros and cons on things, try to take a look at it from all angles. I know there have been times when, you know, as superintendent, not just here but in other places, you know, you look at it from the side of the school and you're looking at it there, but the board brings in what the community is thinking, and that's critical also, because then that gives, you know, us an opportunity to say, okay, well, maybe there's some things we need to modify, or how can we merge things. We have to establish, you know, some areas where if there's just not going to be an agreement on some things, that we never become disagreeable, that we never stop communicating, that we always, you know, have that commitment that at the end of the day, we still know what our common goal is, and that's, you know, for what's best for our children. And I'm just one of those who believes if you keep working at it long enough, you'll come to a place where, you know, everybody can be at least, you know, at that point where we can continue to work together.
Okay. Dr. Daniels, how have you gone about bringing change to a school district? You've answered it a lot already.
Yeah, really have. Really just trying to take my experiences, my understanding of different issues and things that are out that impact, you know, school districts and student learning, and make sure, and help everyone become knowledgeable about that, you know, become a resource, and then make recommendations or suggestions or put it on the table for consideration, you know, to see how we can, you know, move some things forward, help people learn how to really, again, as it has been stated before, monitor what we're doing, really evaluate it for effectiveness, and then set what we need to do to go forward. And if change is needed, you know, make sure that we implement those changes.
How would you support building administrators and also be supportive of teachers?
Well, you know, as I've kind of said before, teachers are the key element, and administrators are the unsung heroes. So providing as much support, as possible, being a listening ear, trying to facilitate movement if something has become stagnated, trying to make sure that concerns at building or classroom levels are explored and solutions, or at least options for solutions are developed. I can't stress enough how important it is to listen and help both principals and teachers explore ways that they can come up with solutions. As they start to do that, be an ear to bounce off of. How do you think this will work? You think this will, well, you can try this, but let me tell you some things that you'll need to look out for, some of those. One of the things, having had the years of experience that I have, I've had an opportunity to see a lot of things. So sometimes I know things have a higher probability of working than others, and it does not necessarily mean that it absolutely won't. But whenever possible, without, micromanaging, give advice, give input, so that they can go forth and implement, but always trying to maintain the type of person and personality where people feel that they can come to me.
My question is, I think you've already answered it, but you might want to elaborate on it. Okay. How do you communicate with staff and community?
One of the things, I go out to buildings, I visit. Sometimes I send, emails to, entire district emails for staff. I have gone to staff meetings on occasions, or school improvement team meetings where we can have some, one-on-ones. I've had opportunities to go to parent meetings at the buildings. I'm really trying to reach out and get to the organizations in the community and establish some good collaboration, there, and keep that. One of the things I'd like to see happen is to have an opportunity where the superintendent, once a month is at the library. People can come and talk, so that then it's not in our house, but it's in the community house. So those are some of the kinds of ways.
What do you do to draw in non-school community members?
Some of the kind of same things. Outreach, kind of trying to go out to where, where our families are. And when I say family, I mean, businesses and organizations and all of that. But try to go there and, avail myself and get there as much as possible. Be sure to participate in activities that the different organizations, host whenever possible. And try to get out there, and I'd like for them to say, oh God, here she comes again, so, but really be visible.
Thank you.
And build partnerships.
Please talk about what you would do the first 100 days on the job as our superintendent of schools. After 100 days, what would you hope to have accomplished?
Okay. Well, a few things, and I'd probably break it down in smaller chunks. The first 30 days, what I would like to see is for me to have had an opportunity to pull in all of our administrative team and, really get a chance to talk about some issues, talk about some immediate things that we need to, take a look at. I would like to have an opportunity to, meet with the board where we just talk about what would those kinds of things be that you would like to see me do. What would you like to see go to, on the list of the to-do items? I would really, what I had mentioned earlier is finding out what what those things are that you each individually hold near and dear, in addition to identifying, you know, what we see as a primary need collectively, so that that can get there right as we, you know, hit the floor running. I'd also like to have, you know, an opportunity to really get out in all of the community groups that I hadn't made before. You know, just make it my business in that 100 days to get out there and see and hear from the community. I would also like to see and hear from the students. What would they like to see? You know, what kinds of things do they want their schools to look like? What do they want their district to look like? And, you know, that's going to be important. Really working on the deficit elimination plan. You know, getting that, and again, that's in that short run. Really getting it tightened up, getting it narrowed down, making sure that who do we need on speed dial at the Department of Ed. Woo. And now you guys got to know I got a song for everything, and I'm just holding back not to break out into my song about trains. But really making sure that we have on speed dial whoever we need to be talking to at the department about our deficit elimination plan. Making sure that we bring the key stakeholders together and look at what the non-negotiables are in trying to preserve the integrity of our academic program, so that as we're going through continually trying to make the modifications and how we spend, there's certain areas we just, you know, this is impacting student achievement, so we can't touch that. We need to, you know, I want to work with that. I'd like for us to take a look at, review, redevelop, and, you know, whatever we need to, our strategic plan, because that is going to be how we get from one day to the next. That's how we're going to be, how we get to 1 week, 1 month, and 1 year to the next. And then in that 100 days, I would like to be able to get input from as many entities as possible on their thinking on some key areas. You know, what's the most important thing we need to do to make sure that our curriculum goes forward? You know, what is one of the most important things we need to do to make sure that others know that we've got a quality program going that is second to none? So that's part of marketing. But then also making sure that everyone understands how much we need our students, how much we care about our students, and keep our students and our families lifted up and pulling together whatever we need to do with that. At the end of that time, it would be my hope that we would have, you know, a plan set that would kind of give us some marching orders. The vision, you know, crystallized again, so that we, you know, continue to, you know, look forward and know where we're headed. And then the coming together of the community in the district to really recognize that the success of both is critical, and how we can all succeed together.
Thank you. This is the portion, we would like to take a few minutes now to provide you with an opportunity to ask any questions you may have of us. Is there any questions you would have, Dr. Daniels?
You know, I just have one. And my question is, I would be interested in knowing what you see as the most important thing that we do in the district. You know, what is the most important thing that we do in the district? You know.
We all want to tackle that?
Everybody, but just, you know.
I
Well-
would say it kind of goes to our vision. High expectations, high achievement, everyone, every day.
That's
And that's- and
exactly
that's
where
it.
I was going to go. Tape right here in front of us.
Yep, and that is our vision as a board.
Anybody else weighing in with anything else? or
They don't
that's
have
about
it, I think.
And I guess that's, you know, and you can hear me say it to anyone, that's one of the best missions that I've ever seen, because it includes everyone. And it's something that is absolutely attainable.
That concludes the formal questions. I'm not seeing any questions in the audience, so one more time. Okay. Dr. Daniels, if you have something you'd like to add, I'm going to take that piece, and you can go to there, and then I'll do the final.
I think I pretty much said it. You know, we have a great community. And we are doing so many great things. We're that hidden diamond that people don't know about, and people need to know about it. And we, as we continue to do those things, to help make ourselves even better, because everyone can always improve. It's just exciting to know that we have a team who's up to the task, and being one who would help lead that charge would be an honor for me.
Thank you. If there's nothing further, we are in recess until, oh, I'm sorry, take back.
Dr. Daniels, on behalf of the board, I'd like to thank you for attending the interview, for sharing some of your perspectives with the board. And as you know, the board is interviewing other candidates, and we'll have a decision to make soon. So we thank you. With that, the board will go into a brief recess. I'm going to ask the members of the audience, just so that everyone understands, the board will not be discussing any of the interviews or any of the answers to the interview or anything else until the conclusion of all interviews. So we're going to give the board a well-deserved break, because it's been, and everyone else to kind of do that long stretch. But I would ask that you not, if you have conversation with the board members, please refrain from discussing the interview process. Thank you.
Thank you. We are in recess until 7:45. We are reconvened at 7:45 p.m. for the purposes of superintendent candidate interview, Mrs. Jennifer Martin. We will now turn the floor over
Thank you very much.
Marie Miller again.
Thank you, President.
Hi, good evening.
Thank you, President McLaughlin.
Thank you.
We'll give you a second to get comfortable here, and while you do that, I will do the introductions. It is my pleasure, on behalf of the Romulus Community Schools Board of Education, to introduce and welcome Ms. Jennifer Martin. Ms. Martin is currently the Assistant Superintendent for Educational Quality with Ypsilanti Public Schools. And I'd like to take a few minutes just to do a brief description of the format for this evening. I'd like to introduce the board members. President Robert McLaughlin, Vice President Ms. Teresa Baird, Secretary Mr. John Theed, Treasurer Ms. Cheryl Buckley, and then our trustees are Ms. Danielle Funderburg, Ms. Xander Kraut, and Ms. Tamika Boyles. I'm so glad you guys didn't move those nameplates on me.
It is Tamika Bowles.
I'm sorry. I apologize. The interview is scheduled to take 60 minutes. We believe it may take a little bit longer this evening, so we have the time available. There will be an opportunity for you, Ms. Martin, to make a closing statement, as well as ask the board any questions that you may have at the end of the formal questioning. Superintendent feedback forms, which are these white sheets, and question forms are on the back table. Members of the audience have the opportunity to provide questions that they may want asked of the candidate. Throughout the interview process, I'll be kind of moving around, hopefully inconspicuously, and I will collect those questions. As the MASB representative for the facilitating the search, I will review those questions to make sure that they can legally be asked. I'll then kind of group them together and provide them to the Board of Education, and they will ask the questions as time permits, if time permits. Additionally, if there are any feedback forms from the previous interview, please provide those to me, and I will submit them to the board. The question cards, again, we ask that you sign your name to those. And the completed feedback forms can be given to me or directly to the secretary of the board. The board will consider comments only if the form has been signed and that they do become part of the public record. The task of choosing the next superintendent is the responsibility of the board as representatives of the community. The board appreciates and seeks input of staff and community in the process. While the board is not seeking the recommendations as to which individual should be hired, they're seeking your input as to the strengths and the concerns about each candidate. Please keep in mind the issues the board will use as a basis for their hiring decisions. They are printed on the bottom of the form. Also, again, keep in mind this form is considered a public document when received by the Board of Education. I'd also like to say part of my role here tonight is timekeeper. You'll see me kind of keep everything on track to let our candidate know where we are in terms of how many more questions. There are about 25 questions with a couple of follow-ups, formal questions, and also to help the board stay on task too. So with that, I'd like to give the mic over and go from there.
I'll give you a minute to get the mic situated. All set?
I believe so.
Okay. Ms. Martin, welcome.
Thank you.
I have your first question. While we have had the opportunity to review your resume, our audience has not. Would you briefly review your educational background and also your employment history?
My educational background, I am a product of public education. I believe firmly in public education and will fight to my last days to protect public education. I graduated from a high school in a metropolitan area nearby, but I won't mention that high school because tonight it's about the Eagles, and we'll let that high school go to rest for now. After high school, as my friends began to matriculate to other areas and go away to college, I made the conscious decision to stay local, and I chose to go to Wayne State University for their College of Education. I wanted to work with children in this area in southeastern Michigan. And Wayne State had an exceptional program which afforded me the opportunity to do a year and a half of training in schools prior to graduation and working with students. I graduated with my undergrad in elementary education and began teaching first and second grade in the Detroit Public Schools. Shortly thereafter, I returned to school and earned my master's degree in educational leadership. I was still employed with the Detroit Public Schools at that time. However, I was quickly catapulted out of the classroom, and I can't say that it was by my choice. Someone recognized my leadership talents, and after long consideration and realizing that I could impact more children out of the classroom than just the 30 that I had in front of me, I took the option of going into a leadership role. I served as curriculum coordinator, I served as staff development, I served as an assistant principal, a principal. I think I've served in every role, including custodians, because I cleaned up a lot of messes along the way. After that time, I was approached by the superintendent of the Oak Park School District. I had a lot of innovative projects happening in the Detroit Public Schools, and she approached me to launch a new 8th and 9th grade public school in Oak Park. Most people may or may not be aware that the 8th and 9th grade years are very critical years for students, and that's where the dropout rates generally occur. I have a very strong relationship with students, especially students that are at risk, and she wanted me to create the program and open the program. It was extremely successful. There were 830 students, 75% male students, which was unheard of at that time for an 8th and 9th grade academy, and we had very good success there. We stayed there for 3 years, and that board had to make some very difficult decisions in terms of deficit elimination and reorganizing, and they realized they couldn't afford to operate all of the schools that they had in existence. They were going to close one of their buildings. I was integral in their decision-making process and volunteered my building and volunteered those grades going back to their grade levels, but also came up with a succession plan. I believe in grooming teacher leaders, and I believe in developing leaders in and around me. So my succession plan included bringing my assistant principal up as the new principal of that new building that they were going to move the children to. And you're wondering, succession plan, where were you going at that time? At that time, I was approached by the superintendent of Ypsilanti to come to Ypsilanti and do some innovative things there. So I knew that I was going to be leaving. I knew that the district needed to do some major decisions as it related to deficit elimination, and it was an opportune time to close that building. My children were still going to be well taken care of with the person that I left them in good hands. I'm currently in Ypsilanti.
Thank you.
Why do you want to leave your current position, and what attracted you to our school district?
Excellent question. I'm actually glad that came up. The personal qualities that I live by are commitment, integrity, loyalty, and quality. And when I accept a position, I believe that I am thoroughly committed to that position and will produce a quality product. Also, I am loyal to that district. Going into the school district of Ypsilanti, again, they were a deficit, or are a deficit district, and a lot of very difficult decisions needed to be made. My first task at hand was redesigning their secondary options, or redesigning their high school, which had been on the bottom 5 persistently lowest achieving list for 8 consecutive years. We were extremely successful in the redesign efforts. The state monitor actually mentioned that we had one of the most aggressive plans, and within 1 year, we took the high school off of the bottom 5 list. Of course, we couldn't catapult it in 1 year up to the top 5%, as one would hope to accomplish. However, we did move from 5 to 8%, which was the first time that it ever moved in 8 years, so in almost a decade. After that time, we realized that the major changes we put in place were academically sound, but they were not fiscally sound for a district that was already $14 million in deficit. We began to work with our legislators and with a neighboring school district and began the difficult conversation of unification. That speaks to my selflessness as it relates to children. I was one of the biggest advocates for the unification, knowing from day one that my position would be eliminated at the end of the unification if the community voted to unify the district. That was not important to me because I believe that I serve children wherever I go. It was more important for me that the children had quality education that was fiscally sound and that they could sustain for the duration of their educational career. The district was in educational crisis for the last 2 decades. This group of children didn't put it in educational crisis, nor did they deserve to fall victim to that. The voters approved the unification in November, and we began the difficult task, the first in the state, of unifying the 2 school districts. So at the present time, I work approximately 15 hours a day, 7 days per week, but it's well worth it because the children will have a quality product in the end. Knowing that my position would be eliminated June 30th didn't stop my passion for what I do. It didn't stop my integrity. It didn't stop my innovation. And it doesn't stop me from reporting every day and creating an exceptional product for children. Why come to Romulus? That's the second part of the question. All right. I had to remind myself. Forgive me. Romulus is an exceptional city. I read an article not too long ago about Romulus wanting to be the comeback city. And if Romulus is going to be the comeback city, this next statement might date me, but then our children should be the comeback kids. I mean, they really should develop that zeal that the actor in the movie redeveloped for his passion and his career. Our children need to be excited about coming to school every day. I read through your district improvement plan, many things in your district improvement plan are identical to the district improvement plan that I put together for the school district of Ypsilanti. I had the opportunity to work with many of your staff members through the Pace Setting Academy districts. There were only 5 districts in the entire state invited to attend that, and we were one of those districts. So I had an opportunity to build some relationships with your staff. You have a lot of great talent here. I have family and friends that live in the community. And if you think reporting to you or reporting to the community is difficult, try reporting to your family that has children in the district. That's more pressure than anything. But I believe that while the city says the sky's the limit, I believe that for the district, the stratosphere or the mesosphere should be the limit, because we can obtain those heights as it relates to educating our children.
Ms. Martin, our community expects its superintendent to be an active participant in all school and community activities. How would you balance your time and place priorities on these activities?
Well, being a student advocate is not what I do. It's who I am. And all that I do is around children. People ask me on a daily basis, how many children do you have? And I tell them hundreds or thousands, and they laugh. But I truly believe that. While I have 2 at home, I believe that all of the children are my children. I'll give you an example. Recently, our basketball team obviously didn't make it as far as the Eagles, but we did go to the regional finals. And when we arrived in Grand Blanc, the other administrators were looking around and they said, well, where did Jennifer go? And someone said, if I know Jennifer, she's in the middle of all the children. And sure enough, I was, because I believe that I am there for children. I have an uncanny ability to connect with students, to connect with families, and I position myself directly in the middle of the students. I attend all of their activities. To this day, I have some children that are graduates of universities, and they still contact me for life advice for their post-secondary options, and I make myself readily available to them.
Thank you.
In the development of a budget, what major goals and objectives do you establish? How many budgets have you developed, and how do they compare with what you would have to do here?
How many budgets have I developed? Well, professionally or personally?
Professional.
Okay. Professionally, I've developed budgets probably for the last 10 years of my life. They've become increasingly complex over the years. I'm currently responsible for all federal and state grant funding in the school district of Ypsilanti, which is the equivalent of approximately $5 million. In addition to that, I have my internal general budget for my department that I'm responsible for overseeing. I also play a large role in the development of the district budget. All decisions that are made as it relates to the budget need to be made in the decision of student academic achievement. Everything needs to be student-centered as the budget is developed. I believe in autonomy. I believe in having the stakeholders' voice heard during the budget process. And one of the things that we were successful in putting into place this past year is an actual calendar of events leading up to for every process. I'm a very systematic thinker, and you can't inspect something that you've not laid out clear expectations for. I say that as it relates to the budget, every stakeholder in the district needs to understand the budget, what it's made up of, and what things cost. As a result, we worked with the business department, and their monthly expenditures go back to the building, and it's presented to their school improvement team. And their school improvement team has an opportunity to put their budget next to their school improvement goals, next to their data, to determine, are we spending the money in this building in an appropriate fashion to support student achievement? And the school improvement team can then make some collective decisions on whether or not to shift that budget around and to build their budget for the next fiscal year. The chairperson or the principal, the building leader, comes to present that to the executive committee or the superintendent's committee, and then they discuss the budget, and then it goes forward to the business office to see if it becomes a balanced budget in the end. But everyone plays a role in developing that budget.
As a follow-up, during a period of declining revenue, explain how you would determine priorities and reallocate resources.
Very similar to what I described. One, we must live within our means. And I think oftentimes we don't understand what what our costs actually consist of. So educating all of our stakeholders is very important. We brought on board an energy manager to discuss the fact of what the lights and the gas and the air conditioning costs, but also the sub costs. And then collectively with our stakeholders, with our teachers as a team, we made some very difficult decisions. In one building in particular, the teachers decided they were not going to utilize subs because that was something in that particular building that had become very costly. And they began to cover each other's classes at no cost to the district when the teachers, their colleagues, were absent. So that's just one example. Another example, we decided as a district to go paperless, and that's something that I was an advocate for. And most of our documentation was done via Google Docs or the intranet, and moved away from that large copying cost that the district had. So a lot of it has to do with educating our stakeholders and helping them to understand what the budget consists of, and then listening to their voice and collectively coming up with a decision. However, again, the decision must be in the best interest of students and student achievement.
Mrs. Martin, please share with us your philosophy and your experiences in collective bargaining.
I've actually sat on both sides of the table, so I have a very different perspective. While I've never been an HR director, early in my career I was voluntold that I was going to be the building union rep, and served in that capacity under DFT for 4 years, and had an opportunity to participate in bargaining as a teacher. Then I became an administrator, and my role was slightly different. I didn't directly participate in collective bargaining until I moved to Ypsilanti. And while I wasn't on the collective bargaining team, because my role as Assistant Superintendent of Educational Quality involved me working directly with the teachers every day, and I wanted to remove myself from that process because it became very heated at that time, I did have an opportunity to do an addendum. When we had to make a decision regarding our redesign of our high school, there were 4 options available at that time. We had the option of turnaround, transformation, closure, or restart. And through the use of data dialogue, our board made the decision that we were going to do the turnaround model. Now, you may recall that was the most aggressive of all 4 models. That required removing 50% of the staff. That required doing an addendum to the collective bargaining agreement. That required additional time. That required additional days. That required additional professional development. At that point, because I was leading the redesign efforts, I went through the collective bargaining process, and we came up with a very amicable amendment to their CBA. One of the references you'll find on my reference page is the UNISERV director that served over that experience.
Just as a follow-up, what has been your experience in dealing with grievances?
Actually, as a building level principal, I didn't have many grievances. I can't say that I had many at all. My type of leadership doesn't lend to grievances. I believe in working out issues in advance. I believe in open dialogue. I use the term thought partners, and I use the term self-report. If you do something and you know that something is an error and we're learning, we're reflecting on what we're doing to become better practitioners, I believe that you self-report the issue in advance versus having someone find out about it after the fact and having to deal with it on the back end. And I practice the same philosophy. I believe in leading by example. Also, with the grievances, there are various levels of the grievances. So once it comes to a level 1 grievance, I believe that you can reach a decision. I've never had a grievance to go past a level 1.
Thank you.
You want a drink?
Sure.
Before we go on?
I love what I do. Forgive me. Okay.
Okay, good evening. Can you share with us your experience with deficit elimination plans?
Yes. Again, going back, well, in my last 2 districts, the school district of Oak Park as well as the school district of Ypsilanti, they were both facing deficit elimination plans. There were a lot of conversations, not only internal, but I believe the process that we followed in Ypsilanti was the better process in that we looked at zero-based budgeting. And we started off with nothing as the baseline and then determined what do we absolutely need to be successful in student achievement? What must we absolutely have for our children to have an optimal education? And we built the budget up versus saying this is the amount of money we have in the pot, how are we going to spread it out? I have experience with closing buildings, opening buildings, shifting people around. None of them have been fun experiences. Well, open buildings have been fun, but closing down programs, never a fun experience for anyone. However, when people are thoroughly educated on the process and the reasons why and the data, most importantly, to support the rationale behind the budget decisions, they seem to be more supportive as it relates to the decisions that are made.
Give me 1 second, I have to finish my notes.
Oh, okay.
Okay. Please give an example when you were especially innovative with business partnerships or grants.
How much time do we have?
Short version?
That's an area of specialty for me. But I must, before I tell you about some of the innovation and some of the partnerships that I have, let me share with you my philosophy on partnerships. Partnerships have to be aligned with our children. They have to be aligned with our goals and with what our children need. Many of the partners that existed in the school district of Ypsilanti upon my arrival may not have very positive things to say about me because I asked the difficult questions. I asked to see their data. I asked to see how their partnerships impacted our students socially, emotionally, physically. And if they had no impact on our students, I asked them to say goodbye and we severed our ties. So some people were not too happy with that. But I do believe that all programs and all partnerships must be in the best interest of our children. Having said that, I went out and I cultivated new relationships. I maintained strong relationships. Being nestled between the major universities, I had an abundance of partnerships with the University of Michigan and with Washtenaw Community College, with Eastern Michigan University. But the one that I'm most proud of, because it's the first in this area, is the partnership with Cooley Law School. And many people would not think to approach Cooley Law School in terms of a partnership. But I selected Cooley Law School to deal with our discipline issues. People are thinking, okay, attorneys, law school, students, discipline, how is that all connected? For me, it was connected via restorative justice. Students can't learn when they're at home, and they can't learn when they're constantly suspended. I needed to come up with a way to have our children in the classroom learning every day. Gathered a small committee together, and we began to talk about restorative justice practices. Met with the two deans of Cooley Law School. They were more than happy to join forces, and as a result, we developed a teen court. And that teen court meets once per month. And it consists of students that have infractions, whose parents have signed all the waivers that they can participate in the teen court versus being suspended. A third-year Cooley Law student serves as the judge, and 2 Cooley Law School students serves as the student attorney, and the students have an opportunity to present their case. The difference is the judge doesn't make the decision. Their peers make the decision. So other students at the high school decide the fate of that student. So going through that process has been very eye-opening for the children at Ypsilanti High School. In addition to that, through Cooley Law School and through a Safe and Supportive Schools grant, we've been able to partner with the Dispute Resolution Center and create peer mentoring and conflict resolution. Actually, the program is going to be featured tomorrow on NPR at 3 and then again at 10 p.m. if you want to find out more information about it. But I'm very proud of the different innovative concepts that we've come up with. Again, if students are not in school, they are not getting the same access to that quality education at home. Not to say that their parents are not educating them, but they're not being exposed to the exact same concept that their classmates are having the opportunity to be exposed to.
As superintendent, what do you see as your role in promoting student achievement?
As superintendent, that is the goal, promoting student achievement. But also the role of the superintendent is to provide leadership based on the vision set forth by the board. So once the Board of Education, being the governing body, determines the vision for the district, it is the superintendent's role to carry out that vision by providing leadership. Ways in which the superintendent does that is by leading different instructional and curriculum concepts that are coming down the pipeline, staying abreast of what's happening as it relates to 21st century education, moving from the 3 R's to the 4 C's and Common Core State Standards and all of those acronyms. I'm full of acronyms, so if there's one that you don't know, please stop me and I'll share that with you. If this doesn't work out, I think I'll create a dictionary of acronyms. Also making sure that all of the staff that are working with our children are highly qualified and that they're properly evaluated, that our facilities are clean, safe, and healthy environments for our students to learn, and that our community is aware of all of the positive things that we're doing, but also joining forces with us to help our children to become successful. We are a community school district, and according to the Coalition of Community Schools, it takes all of us to make this work. The school district cannot do this in isolation. So the public face of the district and actually going out and building those relationships, maintaining those relationships, those are all very critical pieces for the superintendent. And of course, you have to deal with building the budget, but that's not the first priority. The first priority would be the student achievement.
Okay, I just wanted to do the follow-up question. You've kind of touched on this here and there, but how has your leadership improved the success of students in your present district?
I'd like to believe it's improved them from a whole child perspective. I take an active interest in the students, and you'll see a letter in that packet from our current board president of the Unified District, and he mentions in there how I have stories about most of the children in the district, personal stories. Different from most central office administrators, I get out into the buildings. I get to know the children. I can go into a kindergarten class and they not only know who I am, they remember the last story we read together. And on the opposite end, conversely, I can go into the high school or not go into the high school and receive a call from the assistant principal saying, your son X did this, and I'll say, put him on the line. Last Friday, during Family Fun Night, a student went to the office and told the principal, call my second mom, I need to talk to her, I'm having a crisis. And the principal called me at home, and we had a conversation to talk through it. So that's the social emotional piece that I try to provide to the children. The academic piece that I provide to the children, I set very high expectations, but I also provide them with tools to be successful. And I encourage them to be successful. If I need to go and provide supports for the students, I do that as well. We have a group of students entering their senior year now. However, during their junior year, it was a goal to have them all take the Compass test. I see that we have the early college model starting here in the fall, and that's great for a select number of students. However, let's see where all of the students score on the Compass. That gives them all personal goals to achieve moving forward. It's difficult to take that entry-level exam, no matter what you're going into, to find out at the day that you're filling out the application where you're scoring. I believe in allowing the children the opportunity to see where they score early and then have a crosswalk. If you scored this on the Compass, more than likely you'll score this on the plan, and that equates to this on the ACT. The children in Ypsilanti right now have data notebooks, and even in the elementary schools, they can tell you what their scores are on the NWEA. They all set personal goals on where to get to next. So in terms of my impact for student achievement, I'm very data driven. It's a conversation that we have on a daily basis, not only with the staff and with the parents, but with the children as well. If you walk into any one of the buildings, you'll see data walls. The students can speak to the data walls. And in the staff lounges, you'll see the school improvement goals on the wall, how close we are to the goals, where we were the last time, and once we've achieved those goals. So the data dialogue really pushes the student achievement. One of the other things that I'm very proud of, I'm very proud of all of the work we've done there. It's been a wonderful experience. Our graduation rate has been pretty flat, and for most people, that's all they look at. That's all they know is the graduation rate. Well, you're not doing something right if your graduation rate is flat. But I took a different approach, and I began to look at the dropout rate. And the dropout rate was 25% when I came on board. that was very disheartening to me. I began to focus on programs and form committees on how to attack the dropout rate. We also had 1% of the student population which was considered off-track continuing. So they didn't drop out, but they were trying to forge ahead and they really didn't know how to get there. Well, by creating multiple secondary options, not only did the dropout rate decrease from 25% to 12% in 2 years, the off-track continuing went from 1% to 21% in that same 2 years. So that, to me, was more significant than the graduation rate, because I knew that when the 5-year cohort and 6-year cohort results rolled out, those babies would be in that cohort of graduates. And for me, it didn't matter if they graduated in the 4 years, because for some of us, it takes a few years longer. When you think about undergrad, most people aren't doing that in 4 years anymore. It's taking 5 or 6 years to finish undergrad. So it's okay for me if a student has some challenges, be it social, emotional, mental, and they need that 5th year. As long as they make it to the finish line, I'm going to give them the help to get there. So,
Hey, thank you.
thank you.
Have you ever had the experience of eliminating a program that was no longer working or the district could no longer afford but was still loved? How did you handle the situation?
That's a loaded question. That has been this process of unification. All programs cannot go forward to the new district. I took the approach of a book study, and that book study was by Dr. Cotton, and it's called Necessary Endings. And I used that book study as the platform for educating the community, educating the administrators to share what they're building and to expand out. And in the book, it discusses the life cycle of a rose bush and how a rose bush is beautiful, but every year it needs to be pruned. And if you don't prune the rose bush, it won't come back to produce beautiful roses. The same thing with programs. We have programs that have been in existence for a long time, but they're not the same beautiful roses, and we have to accept the fact that we need to make some pruning decisions along the way. Also, using the example of a rose bush, you have some buds that only produce 1, 2, or 3 blooms, and then you have others that give you tremendous amount of blossoms. That would be the second tier of pruning. If you have a program that's only serving a small group of students and not providing equity and access for all students, that would probably be the next program that would need to be eliminated during that conversation. But again, through educating the people that are making those decisions.
How many times in the past semester were you in a classroom? And please describe what you have learned from those visits.
In the last semester, how many days are in a semester? 90? That means I've probably been in the classroom 50 of the 90 days. And I prefer to be in a building 90 of the 90 days. But I intentionally schedule days of the week to go into the classrooms and spend time with the students. Again, I believe in inspecting what you expect. And the only way that I'll see that is by being in the classroom. Being over curriculum and being over the academics of the students, I believe in doing instructional rounds. And I would go in, not in isolation, but with a team, and try to determine a problem of practice, not to observe a particular teacher, but to look throughout the building, throughout the grade levels, and determine if there's commonality within the grade level or within the building that we need to focus our attention on in terms of curriculum. I'd spend a lot of time with the students in terms of their projects. One of the redesigns for secondary education is a project-based learning platform. So I spend a lot of time there with the project-based learning students. So what I've learned that our children are extremely bright. And I learned that they will be smarter than all of us one day. We are not teaching our children reading, writing, and arithmetic. We are teaching them to be critical thinkers. We are teaching them to become employers. We are teaching them for jobs that do not exist right now. So that, as I mentioned before, the 3 R's no longer exist. It's now the 4 C's, the critical thinking, collaboration, communication, and creativity. So we've had to make that paradigm shift.
Thank you.
You've already addressed some of this question. Student achievement is very important to us. What action would you be responsible for to enhance student learning? Please give us examples of how you have addressed the achievement gap in your current district.
Can you repeat the first part of that question?
Student achievement is very important to us. What action would you be responsible for to enhance student learning?
Okay. As the superintendent, again, I believe that you're responsible for providing leadership as it relates to curriculum, as it relates to vertical alignment of the curriculum, as it relates to providing the supplies and necessary resources to be successful. In my current position, to address the achievement gap, first we had to identify entry and exit criteria. Too often, we put children into a track. We put them into a Title I or a 31A, which is at risk or in need of supplemental services. And we never go back and evaluate the children or use the data to determine if the programs have been successful. So in my current role, that was the first thing that I did. We had to establish entry criteria and exit criteria, because the goal is to have every child performing at grade level and or above, not meeting the bare minimum. Also, using the data and doing actual evaluations of all of the programming in the district to determine whether or not those programs had success or had academic impact on the children. And if they didn't, making that decision to eliminate those programs along the way. And then creating new programs and bringing new things on board to enhance the academic environment. One of the pieces that we took on this year was morning math for our students that were not making grade with the mathematics curriculum. So we brought that in the morning, and it also assisted our families who needed to drop off their children. So they were no longer paying for latchkey. The children were getting additional academic support as it related to mathematics. The parents were happy, the children were happy. I had a chance to feed them breakfast and see them first thing in the morning. So it was a win-win for all of us, and we saw an increase in their math scores as a result.
What is your experience with current technology? I'm sorry, it's expertise with current technology.
Well, I don't know if expert would be a good word for me, but I know who to call when I need an expert. But I am fairly proficient, I will say that. I had the opportunity, or still have the opportunity, to have the Department of Technology under my supervision, and we leveraged our technology to support the student learning in every regard. I think we are currently one of the most technology-rich districts in southeastern Michigan. The children have everything from iPads to digital cameras to document cameras for the teachers to display. All of the classrooms have the e-note boards. A lot of the math lessons are done online. So in terms of technology, we're very, very proficient, I would say, is the terminology. I also learned how to leverage financial resources as it relates to technology. I currently am the signature for the E-rate reimbursement. So I look at those things when we make decisions as it relates to technology. And this year, I believe we had a little over $85,000 reimbursed back to the district through our E-rate reimbursement. Also, communicating with our families in terms of technology, the use of social media. I remember this winter, it was horrific in terms of our snow days, and I can remember the students on Twitter saying, "Hey, Miss Martin, are we going to have a snow day tomorrow?" So it was a way for me to communicate with the students, it was a way to communicate with the families. We put parent portals in all of our buildings, recognizing that not all of our families have internet access or computers at home. So we created a parent portal in the office for them to come in, have access to their student records, their student achievement, their attendance. Also, one of the secondary redesign options was a one-to-one computer high school. And again, that's the project-based learning high school that we have, and the success there has been tremendous. Within the first year, it earned national demonstration site from the national organization, and we've had a lot of dignitaries to come by and observe that program. So we use technology on a daily basis. Some of the ladies in my department, and I won't embarrass them because I do know a few of them are sitting here, but they're master teachers and they've been around the district for some time. And I put an iPad in their hand and said, okay, this is what we're going to do. And the one said, well, I've never done that before. And I said, just like a student, this is the perfect time to learn. And so I have very high expectations for people, but I don't profess to know everything. I learn along with my staff, I learn along with my team, and I learn along with my students. Not afraid to take risks.
The follow-up question to this is, what is your idea of the classroom of the future?
The classroom of the future, I don't believe will have walls at all. I think that most of our students, it will be very fluid. It will be very similar to business in my mind. Students will have places where they come and do teamwork, they do collaboration, but I think the four walls that we currently know today in terms of education will not exist. Much of what we do we live in an ever-changing global economy, and in order for our children to keep up with that, they have to expand outside of the four walls. So I see education expanding along with it.
Okay.
Thank you.
What is the role and the importance of extracurricular activities in an educational program?
Extracurricular activities, or as we rename them, co-curricular activities, because they really complement the educational environment. And that is my belief, that they are complementary to the academic environment. For many, that's their entire purpose for coming to school. However, I believe that you are always a student first. I think back to my days in Detroit Public Schools, and at that time I had a lot of exemplary athletic programs, and I always put the importance on the student athlete. You're the student first. I expect all of my student athletes to go to either a Division I or Division II school, not just based on their athletic ability, based on their academic ability as well. So I think that those are complementary. I think that all students should be afforded the opportunity to participate in co-curricular activities. I'm reminded of a young man who stole my heart. He was an autistic student. He was morbidly obese, but he came to me every day, and forgive me for getting choked up, but he came to me every day, and all he said was, Jonathan wants to play football. And I had to create a way for Jonathan to be a part of the football team. So I met with the coach, and we discussed it, and I ordered Jonathan a jersey. I knew Jonathan couldn't play, but Jonathan just wanted to be a part of that football team. So the night of the big game, I marched Jonathan out onto the field, and he said, Jonathan, play football. Jonathan, play football. And we went onto the football field, and Jonathan sat on the bench. But from that day forward, Jonathan never had to go back out on the field. He never had to play in a game. But Jonathan knew that he was a part of that football team. And that's very important to me. So all students having the opportunity, not necessarily, when I say equitable, I mean the opportunity, not necessarily equitable in terms of everyone is not going to be the starting quarterback, but they at least have an opportunity to be involved.
Okay. Please share with us your experiences in working with all special needs students, and have you developed alternative methods to deliver services to meet their needs?
Was that a trick? That was a perfect lead-in. Okay, so reread that for me one time, please.
Okay, please share with us your experiences in working with all special needs students, and have you developed alternative methods to deliver services to meet their needs?
Absolutely.
Just that.
I have very personal connections with students with disabilities, having several in my family. But that didn't start my passion for students with special needs. I remember far back to being a middle school student and tutoring students with special needs. And I was all of 11 or 12 myself. It's just something that I had an innate ability to do. But then when I moved into education, I remember being a first grade teacher, and we didn't have enough room, and our classes were we were over capacity. And I had 41 students in a first grade class, and 11 of those 41 students had disabilities. But it didn't matter, because I learned at that time, and I learned by way of the students, that if you pair an extremely gifted student with a student with disabilities, they find common ground in the middle. That accelerated student tended to be more compassionate as it related to the student with disabilities, and the student with disabilities tended to work harder to rise to the occasion. So that was one thing that I did. And then when I moved into administration, I began to explore the opportunity of co-teaching and not having students pulled out in isolation to a resource room or being put into a room all alone, but actually having two teachers in the classroom working simultaneous together. And the way I view that, I worked a lot with Dr. Rebecca Hines out of Florida State. You have the content expert, and then you have the differentiation expert. So you have the one who knows all of the content, and then you have the other who knows how to deliver that content to the student. So I've done a lot with co-teaching. That was something I implemented in Oak Park, and then when I got to Ypsilanti, did it there as well.
I'm sorry, I'm next. Can you share with us any methods of accountability and motivation you have initiated successfully to ensure the delivery of a quality instructional program?
Accountability.
Would you like me to read it again?
Please.
Sure. Can you share with us any methods of accountability and motivation you have initiated successfully to ensure the delivery of a quality instructional program?
Okay. Everyone wants to be successful, from the student to the classroom teacher, and definitely central office and the Board of Education. That's our job. We're here for students. We're here for student achievement. So in terms of the measures of success and in terms of implementing strategies to ensure that we're successful, the evaluation process, the program evaluation process. So taking away the professional evaluation from the program evaluation and the fidelity of implementation to determine if this is the best instructional program for our students, because not all students flourish with the same instructional program. The perfect example would be the math programs. You have some districts that do extremely well with everyday math, and then you have other students or subgroups that have a very difficult time with everyday math. That is not an instructor issue. That is an instructional method that needs to be reevaluated. And you don't throw away your car when you have a problem. You fix that piece so that your car will continue to transport you. So making those decisions along the way. I'm big on evaluation. I'm big on making data-driven decisions. This past week I had the opportunity to celebrate not only with one building, but 4 buildings in all of Washtenaw and Livingston County. For the first time in the history of the school district of Ypsilanti, the student growth in reading was 3rd highest in both counties. So that is one of the successes based on using the data, using our NWA scores, digging into the Descartes and determining what specifically our students needed, and then evaluating our success on the end.
Okay, just like to take one brief moment to interrupt and just say that we have about 8 formal questions left for you. So you're moving along and we're pretty much on target. Thank you.
Describe your past relations with administrators, teachers, support staff, and their unions.
Administrators,
Teachers,
teachers,
support staff, unions.
As it relates to administrators, my role in central administration is a teacher of administrators. And I believe an administrator's role is being a teacher to the teachers. So it's a very supportive role. I provide them with the necessary tools to be successful. Again, I go back to the evaluation piece and self-reporting. If you're struggling with something or you need additional support, I have an open door policy. I'm in the building on a regular basis to serve as a thought partner, not in a threatening role, but in a supportive role. I participate in their school improvement process. I support them as it relates to anything from discipline to IEPCs to dealing with difficult parents. If I see them do something in error, I don't hesitate to call them in and have an immediate conversation. Because if it's something that they're doing in error, 9 times out of 10, they don't know that it's an error. And that needs to be brought to the forefront immediately. But then also help them understand the proper procedure to take care of an issue and provide them with the tools and the support to correct that issue. As it relates to the teachers, again, I have a very open door policy with the teachers. I'm in the buildings, I'm in the classrooms on a very regular basis. I value their feedback. I use the term thought partner a lot. I appreciate my team members pushing back. And when I say team, my team is not a small nucleus. My team consists of all of the stakeholders. So if there's something that you have an idea about, I would expect you to push back, because collectively we can come up with a better program or better product in the end than I can in isolation. So I have an extremely good rapport with my teachers. When I look to do any type of committee, I always have my teachers and my administrators serve on those committees, and my support staff. I'm not going to leave them out of the equation. I spend a lot of time in the buildings with the support staff. I go in and do lunchroom duty. You see me bend over and pick up things on the floor. Again, as a community, it's all of our job to get things done. It's not one person's job to get things done. So trying to lead by example, engaging them in conversation, respecting their input, inviting them to serve on committees. I go and identify them before they can volunteer to serve on committees, because they are an important part of our community. And unions, the union represents all of it, so.
Okay, I have the next question. Gaining commitment from others is essential for a superintendent, whether it is from school personnel or the community. What techniques have you used to gain acceptance of ideas or plans? And please give us an example of how you used one of these techniques.
Gaining acceptance, I think a lot of it has to do with being visible, maintaining integrity and professionalism, being transparent. I live by a train track too, so I'm accustomed to the noise. I can talk through that. I can sleep through that. Being transparent with the group, whatever group of constituents it is, in the community, in the district, and providing them with the necessary data. Numbers tell the story. Perception data, student achievement data, attendance data, discipline data. We must be transparent. We must be realistic. We must have an accurate reality data portrait of who we are in order to know where we want to go. So that's one of the things I do. I'm very transparent. Sometimes that's come back to haunt me in the end, but I believe in having those upfront, ongoing conversations with individuals. Examples of gaining acceptance, one that's happened over the last 6 months, again, with the unification, you had 2 school districts that had their own set of culture, their own climate, and their own way of doing things, and we had to facilitate a process of bringing the 2 together. I found myself spending 2 days out of the 7 in that school district and building relationships with that staff, with those students, with the parents. And it's to the point now where they ask for me if I'm not in the meeting with them. So the facilitation skills that I've learned through critical friends groups and National School Reform, that has definitely helped me in that process. But keeping the central focus of all decisions, all discussions, all committee work around our students and student achievement has been very instrumental in that process.
How often and by what means will you communicate with the board?
Perhaps too much. I definitely am a technology-driven person. One of the things I request my buildings to do is to submit a weekly report to me with the great things that are happening in their building. I then compile those things into a weekly report for our board. It goes through my current superintendent, of course, and the different departments add their pieces, but a weekly memo to the board. There are some things that you can't wait a week to hear. There's some things that you need immediate. That would require picking up the telephone and making those immediate phone calls. Other things that are not as pressing, but still you need to be made aware of right away, you could get that via email or via text message for those of you that text. Those type of communications would definitely, face-to-face meetings.
As a follow-up, if you and the board disagree on an issue, how would you resolve it?
The board sets the direction, and the board would be the employer of the superintendent. However, if there's something that's morally, ethically, or illegal that I could not agree with, I would present all of the necessary information, documentation, and data, and hopefully, through the evidence provided, we could come to some type of collective agreement moving forward.
Thank you.
I think you have answered this question too.
Okay.
How long have you gone about bringing change to a school district?
Oh, I believe in turning it upside down. No, I actually believe in going in and observing initially. There are a lot of things that people are doing right in the classroom, in the schools, in the community. So the first thing would be to conduct a needs assessment, a comprehensive needs assessment to see what are we doing extremely well, what are we doing okay, and what are the things we absolutely must get rid of and start over again. So doing a needs assessment would be the first thing. All of my ideas may be wonderful in my mind, but they may not be the ideas needed at that time. So the ideas would be based on the needs of that subgroup, that school, that district, not based on my personal needs.
Thank you.
If I may add to that question, in the back of your packet, the last 5 pages, you will find a fairly comprehensive plan of action and entry document. Those are the goals that I've set for myself, if selected as your next superintendent, to accomplish in the first 90 days. You will find objectives for all of the respective areas, you will find goals, and you will find outcomes that you can expect to see within the first 90 days of employment, along those same lines.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, my last question, I believe you've answered most of this also, so if you just want to touch on this, how would you support the building administrators and also be supportive of teachers?
Again, everyone in the district is a team. And while I may be the coach of the team, I have to recognize who my guards are. Who are the rebounders? Who plays offense? Who plays defense? And bring them into the conversation when necessary, while providing them the support, while providing them the direction, and by providing the evaluation of the systems and the individuals to ensure that they're implementing with fidelity and that all of our children are being successful.
Okay, the first part of my question you already answered, but if you'd like to elaborate, feel free. But the second part, I think you might want to actually talk about. How do you communicate with staff and community?
Okay. With staff, again, I'm very visible in the building, so we have face-to-face communication. I answer email 24 hours a day, 7 days per week. So I communicate via email. We have phone conversations, and then also social media. Again, I mentioned the students contacting me on Twitter. The staff does the same. So those are some of the ways that I communicate. With the families, I'm, again, visible in the community. Monthly newsletters or quarterly newsletters out to the families. Letters on a more consistent basis if it's something that is of urgent or necessary for them to receive immediately. One of the things as a building level principal, my middle school parents always complain that, our children don't bring home letters anymore. They seem to disappear in the backpack. And this was before technology had evolved to the Google group. So I created a Yahoo group for all of my parents. And when they came in to pick up the student schedules, I took all the parents' contact information, and on Monday morning, I sent out a weekly notice to all of my parents informing them of what was happening in the building during that week. And they really appreciated that because they knew sometimes before the students knew. And students didn't really appreciate that, but it really helps. So I have a philosophy in calling people back within 24 hours. Even if it's to say, I received your message, I'm going to look into that, I need to investigate, I'll get back with you. But when I say I'll get back with you, I give them a timeline. I'll get back with you by Friday, or I need 48 hours to investigate this. I never allow them to go wondering, when is she going to call me back? For families that cannot get out to me, I've made home visits. Sometimes that's necessary. When we have students, people always say in terms of the recruitment for student enrollment, well, if you go to this specific area or if you go to that specific area, I believe you go to all of the areas, because if children are there, you go. We've signed up parents in the parking lot of Sam's Club. We always have the enrollment packets with us, and if we see a parent, we have a conversation, they want to enroll, we have the documents readily available. So going out into the community is vital as well. One of the newest things that I'd like to try, I've not had an opportunity to do this yet, is the podcast idea. I really like taping the podcast and having that put on the website. I'm adamant on having a website that is current and up to date with accurate information for the parents to access. Most of the families have smartphones of some shape or form, and they can access that information right away. So that's another way that I use to communicate with families and community as a whole.
Okay, what do you do to draw in non-school community members?
Non-school community members, to draw them in. Well, the community as a whole, extending past the walls of the school, they have to understand the investment in students. And I worked with a group out of Ohio, Knowledge Works, and they have a formula. And I've actually populated Romulus's numbers for the graduating class of 2011 and took the graduating class, how many went to college, what the cost would be, how much they would generally make in a lifetime if they're a high school grad, how much they would make if they were a college grad over their lifetime, et cetera. And then what it all boiled down to is the community as a whole has an investment in that class of $106 million from that class, just right here in this immediate community. Now, I was not the genius behind coming up with that formula, but it works. And when people understand that investing in education, there's a return on that investment, a social return, our property values, our elderly are cared for, I won't be able to take care of myself for the duration of my days. I need our young people to learn the skills necessary to help take care of me. And when we all understand that it's collective and that we all have to invest in the children to receive that return on the investment, they begin to have a clearer picture. So mainly from the business perspective, they seem to get the dollars and cents a little bit more. But when you have the conversations with the community as it relates to having safer communities with students that are educated, that come out and do community service projects. I'm big on community service projects with students as well. Again, going back to my days as a principal, every month I had a mandatory community service project for the entire school. And we all had to participate in that community service project, either going out into the community or inviting the community in as a way to connect. One of my more embarrassing times connecting with the community, because I have 2 left feet, so please don't ask me to dance. The arts is really big in Ypsilanti, and my first year there, they had a huge production of the Nutcracker, and I volunteered to be in the opening scene and dance in front of 500 people. I would not like to repeat that, but that was a way for me to connect with the community and to get to know some of the key stakeholders in the community.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Please talk about what you would do the first 100 days on the job as our superintendent of schools. After 100 days, what would you hope to have accomplished?
Well, what I plan to accomplish in those 100 days are the last 5 pages of that book, but a short synopsis of that would be to really getting into the community, getting into the schools, getting to know the students, getting to know the programs, getting to know our physical plants, building relationships with you, the individual board members, getting to know the local government officials, getting to understand our partnerships. So a lot of it will be building a knowledge base, doing a comprehensive needs assessment, and then making some determinations as to next steps, where we need to go based on the information obtained during that 90 days.
Okay, we're at the point now where we would like to take a few minutes to provide you with an opportunity to ask any questions you may have of us.
Okay. I did draft a few. Now the tables have turned. As a board trustee or officer, what would you identify as points of pride for the district? Conversely, what are areas in need of immediate attention?
Board members, how you want to do this? You want to go this way or this way?
Well, I think that,
Our biggest points of pride most recently is our Romulus Eagles and our Romulus Lions from our community alternative high school that won their state championships in their division. So that would be our immediate point of pride. We've also been achieving wonderful success with our SIG grant. As you know, we were the second largest recipient of SIG funding. I know the board shares in my pride. We're very excited about the early college program that's about to start in our district this fall. You know, we pride ourselves on providing a quality education for every person. I think one of our weaknesses as a district is letting the community know what we do, letting them know the good things that we do. And that boils down to communication and bell ringing. Anybody have anything to add to that?
I think also we just got an award from the Camp Learn a Lot.
Yes,
so
Michigan Association of School Boards has recognized one of our school buildings. I don't want to put her on the spot, but the principal and the director of that program is here for our summer school, summer program, Camp Learn a Lot. So, you know, that's absolutely a point of pride.
We have some our peer-to-peer program, which is something similar to what you talked about for our high excelling students and our special needs students coming together, and they're like mentors for them.
I think our National Honor Society too, much they do in the community. Our students are doing a lot in the community.
Leadership students.
Yeah.
They're very active and service-oriented to the community.
and all our schools made EYP last year. That's very good.
Absolutely.
And I think
Absolutely.
another thing that Mr. Hurd's really proud of, who's the principal at our high school, is our seniors from last year receiving over $3 million in scholarships. So I know that's a very big point of pride for him.
And us too.
And us too.
And our dedicated staff. We have
Exactly.
a great staff of principals and teachers. And
Well, that floodgate's just gonna keep going.
Right.
Say our robotics team just notified me that we came in 51st in the world.
All right,
The competition, and they'll
outstanding.
be coming to our board meeting to brag about that.
Do you have water robotics as well? If not, I will be bringing that when I come on board.
That may be a need that we're looking at, is use of a pool that's not used.
Well, water robotics is definitely something that the students find very interesting and they're very engaged in. One of the other things I noticed, your district mission statement is to continuously provide innovative learning opportunities, which will best prepare learners to meet the challenges in the future. How will you know if you were successful in achieving this mission? Have you developed a portrait of a Romulus grad, and which data are you using to evaluate the success?
Excuse me, before you go on to that question, I was waiting, I didn't want to interrupt. That's okay. I just wanted to let you know, on the early college program, I agree with everything the board is saying about everything that's stated, but on the early college program, I do not agree with it completely. I have done my research on it, and I found some flaws within the program itself. So in that area, I think there's definitely a need for some improvement on that program. So I just wanted to make that known to you. And that's all I just wanted to make known. And far as something that we need to work on, just so that you know what you probably already know, just from the previous board or previous experience that you've had working with other school districts, we too are dealing with a debt issue right now. So I think that just your expertise that I've heard so far that you've had with that may be something that is also of a good area.
I'm going to ask board members to refrain from getting into a conversation with the candidate in terms of just share your points of pride.
Oh, no problem. She'd asked which both sides, so I was just letting her know both sides of it. Thank you. Thank you.
The question was, in accordance with your mission statement, have you developed a portrait of a Romulus graduate? And what forms of data are you using to evaluate the success of that portrait of a grad?
That's a very good question.
As a portrait as a whole?
Portrait as a whole. Students graduating from Romulus Community Schools will look like this.
Yeah. That I probably would say, I don't know that we have really put like expectations. I think we're so driven now towards, making sure that our kids are college ready and are performing well on the ACT. It's kind of, I made made it cloudy on what that would look like. I mean, I would say that we would all hope that they would be successful, that they would be college ready or workforce ready for some post-secondary opportunities or the workforce. But as far as having like bulleted points, I would say I don't know that we.
That's what where we're starting to go with the data-driven direction that we've given, and the data is just now getting to the point. That's where we've got the coaches, the data coaches that have been working specifically at the middle school, but they're going to be working district-wide, and then they're going to get to the point where and as a matter of fact, this summer, we're likely to be revisiting our strategic plan and things that are going to bring those kind of things into focus.
Very good.
Um,
I'm sorry.
One of the things we do need help on is our student enrollment is decreasing, and so we need to, I'm glad that you brought up marketing and stuff, because we do need to get more students in the schools.
We need to tell our story. No one else is going to tell it for us, and unfortunately, the word that usually gets out is the negative and not the positive things that we're doing. So that is a big part, communicating and definitely involving the stakeholders into the positive things that we're doing. I do have one last question. As you select a new leader, are you looking for someone to maintain status quo? Or do you seek, and more importantly, will you support someone who believes in innovation, creation, and exploration of 21st century competencies?
I think it's imperative to have someone who can think out of the box, especially as the state, keeps cutting the budgets, and so you only have a certain amount of limited funds. So to be innovative and to think of different programs where you're be able to use the funding that you have, but still accomplish the goals that need to be set. I mean, yes, definitely thinking out of the box, bringing new programs if they're, sound financially. I think that's, who wouldn't want that?
Well, you'd be surprised. Some people become very content.
Want that, but I also am a firm believer too that just because if it's not broke, don't fix it. So making sure, like you talked about, having a needs assessment. If it's working, then I don't think that it should be tampered with. I'm sure that the board probably feels the same way, but definitely being innovative, because as our resources are shrinking, we have to be creative.
I think, my thing is, any ideas are more than welcome. And I just want our district to be here in 5 and 10 and 15 years from now. And obviously, we need somebody that can push that forward and make sure we are still here. And one of the things you hit on is I did 2 career days Monday where the students came to me in 11th grade and 9th grade and did a speech or taught me some questions, and they had to interview me. And one of the questions was, what do you suggest for students in school? And I said, well, you stay in school as long as you can, but there's jobs. I don't envy kids nowadays because there's jobs out there that aren't even invented for these kids yet that we have to teach them, because the jobs that they see now aren't going to be here in 5 or 10 years. So I like that idea. You say we have to train kids for the future that jobs aren't even invented yet.
And if
that
I
these
may,
kids can.
just touch upon something else, I currently have students engaged in the Airtropolis project. I have 4 students working with that project, creating their website, doing job shadowing, doing internships. And as you know, that spans from DTW to the Willow Run Airport in Washtenaw County. There's no reason that our children being with DTW in the heart of our city involved in Airtropolis project. And I'm doing that with the Wayne County and Washtenaw County commissioners right now. So again, reaching out to the elected officials to get them involved in the education of our students.
We have no questions from the audience, so we move to the opportunity for you to complete your closing statement.
Well, I'd just like to thank you for having the opportunity to come here this evening and share this time with you and for you to listen to my ideas and thoughts. I know that this is one of the most difficult decisions that you have to make, selecting a new superintendent to lead the district into the next decade, if not beyond. And I don't envy you for that. While you may find other candidates that are more seasoned in terms of age and or years of experience, I guarantee you will not find someone more passionate, committed, and dedicated to the work than I am. So with that, I'd just like to thank you, and I look forward to your support, and I look forward to serving the students and the citizens of Romulus.
Thank you. Thank you.
And we'd like to thank everybody that attended tonight also for sitting here for the 4 hours. We appreciate that.
Okay, on behalf of the board, I'd like to thank Ms. Martin for coming, sharing her information with us. And again, for the members of the audience, I want to remind you that the board will discuss all of the candidates' strengths and their opinions at the conclusion of our final interview. If you have comments that you want to present to the board, complete those. I will be back in a second, but in the meantime, you can submit them to the board secretary directly. And we will be back tomorrow with the conclusion of the interviews. And please refrain from speaking to the board members.
Thank you very much.
about the candidates.
Thank you. It was
My
very
pleasure.
nice to meet you.
My pleasure.